The first one is going to be from my sister, Chloe, and Partha. They started a company a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to ruin Chloe's pitch, so I'm not going to say very much, but I'm very enthused about it. Every time I talk to them, they're meeting with Warner Brothers in Los Angeles, or the other day they're on the phone with the head Xbox team, and they've got a tech product that actually has the possibility of revenue and product. In fact, they got their first revenue check from an $8 billion publicly listed company last week. So, Chloe, come on up. And
hey guys, I'm Chloe Kettell. I am the CEO and co-founder of Polyport, where we are bringing NSA-grade security to the creative industry. So we're changing the way that people protect their data, from the walled garden approach of security, where enterprises keep building bigger and stronger firewalls, and hackers always seem to find a way in, to a model where the data protects itself. You know, it drives my co-founder Partha and I crazy every single time that we hear about a data breach, because the data should have been encrypted, rendering it useless. So instead of building bigger and more expensive walls, we've created a way where the data protects itself. So the Polyport platform protects specifically 3D data wherever it travels throughout its entire life cycle, so that companies can now leverage untapped global talent across the globe to build some of the best products. And they can also diversify their portfolio by bringing in additional revenue streams, because they can now distribute those assets to places that they couldn't have before. Now, you may be asking why 3D specifically? Well, as we've heard all weekend from other presentations, gold is king. Now, I'm sure some of you may dispute that for other types of hard assets, but let's just say that gold is king. Well, gold is one of the most valuable physical assets, and digital assets are becoming more valuable than the physical ones. Literally everything that you guys see here today was created from a 3D model. Whether it's advanced robotics, Boeing 787 airplane designs, to Marvel's Spider-Man, or 3D printed figurines. And these assets contain every single step that a person took to create that design. They contain all the necessary information to recreate that design in an automated fashion. That's intellectual property, that's know-how, and that's why these assets are a high-value target for theft. So what we're going to show you today is one embodiment of how our protection works, and how and how our product can work agnostically across all of your workflow tools and processes, because we're a transparent layer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Partha show.
So I'm going to give you guys a live fire demo of our software, and it's going to show you how I can get a random person from the crowd and not have them install any software, but protect data, send it to me, and then control it wherever it is. So when I download it from an email or something like that, I'll set it on my computer, and remotely, I think I'm going to pick Matt Geiger, because he looks like he's eating over there. Could you come up here? I need a volunteer with your computer, please. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is we got to connect Matt to this projector over here so we can see what all goodies he has on his computer. I gave him a little heads up to make sure that he didn't have any weird stuff on his, because it's Matt after all, you know? So you might have some like Wharton papers on there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Matt this thumb drive right here, which has a 3D asset that's made in Maya LT, which is it's a simple asset, it's a bore, right? And I'm going to give this asset to him, and I'm going to send him to a website, and I'm going to have him protect it. And so I'll walk you through that whole process, and then we'll show you what happens when he sends it to me on my computer, and how he can control it from his MacBook, which looks pretty old, actually. Yeah. Is it from 1973? Nice. I'm a fan of ancient technology. That's why we have the small form factor on the screen, by the way. All right, cool. So here you go, Matt. Take this guy, and I'm going to guide you to a website in a second. Let me know when you have that thing plugged in. All right, so open a Chrome browser or your web browser, if you could. And I want you to go to Polyport. Do you need me to spell that? Okay. Polyport-demo.azure, that's A-Z-U-R-E, websites.net. Okay, cool. Wow, it worked. This is awesome. Okay, Now what I'm gonna have you do is browse over, go ahead and click OK on this screen here. So what you're seeing right here is a representation of our technology, which can take many forms, right? This is just one that we use for a demo. It's for media and entertainment customers. But our technology is designed to be transparent, so it can interact with whatever workflows or systems that you have, and it can take whatever embodiment you want it to look like, right? So in this case, we're doing it for media and entertainment, and it's this form factor because it's designed to be a Windows agent that pops up from your system tray. Those are the two things I wanted to cover. So now, can you go ahead and click on the top project up there, Kryptonic? Yeah. All right. So can you zoom a little bit out so let's go, yeah, pinch that thing. Yeah, cool. All right, so you see the plus button on the bottom left? If you could go ahead and first navigate to where that thumb drive is so you could see with the assets on the drive that we're gonna work on protecting. Hit Finder, yeah. I used to be in tech support, so it's okay. All right, so here we have the asset. You don't have to open it, you probably won't be able to open it. But what I want you to do is I want you to drag it. Well, hit plus over here first. Yep. And then drag that asset into there. All right, and hit OK. So what's happening right here is the asset is now listed in this library, but Matt has been fed back a protected version of the file. We're not storing the file in the cloud. We're only storing meta about the file and identifying metrics and things that we can track to know who needs to be able to access it, and that's how we do our permissions, right? So now, Matt, you have the protected BOR that's been given back to you. What I want you to do is pop up an email and shoot me that BOR that got protected and sent back to you. I feel like I'm a pastor. Maybe it could be a future calling, man. All right. Go ahead and send me that BOR so it went back to your downloads folder. It'll be the same file that we opened, but it's called .protected or something. So it'll be in your downloads folder. Look at that. This is tech savvy user here. And my email is ray@polyport.io. Cool. All right, so if the internet's all work over here, then some amazing things should happen. So I'm gonna pop open my email, and while we're doing that, since you've done that, go back to that site, keep that there, and what we're gonna try to do here is, since he sent me the file, and obviously he hasn't given me any permissions, I'm gonna try and open it and see what happens on my computer. Yes, I don't care about that. Okay, so here's the file. I'm gonna save it in my downloads folder. I'm not blocking the screen, am I? With my big head? Cool. So, here we go. Let's open the downloads folder. This is the same demo that we give all our media and entertainment customers. And it's crazy because they can do this from their own machines. They don't have any software on them, and they can watch while they give me permissions and then take them away in real time. And that's the thing that amazes them the most. But this is just like the bare minimum of what our tech does. So here's the BOR that I just downloaded that he just sent me by email. And I'm gonna try and open it. And as you guys can probably predict, since he didn't give me any permissions, it shouldn't work. And you'll have to bear with me on this demo because Maya is a very slow program to load. And actually, one of our advisors is the original writer of Maya. And so I give him crap all the time, like, can you make Maya faster? And he's like, nah, it's impossible. So that's a good story, right? Cool story, bro. All right, so as you can see here, the asset is not working. It says it's an unrecognized file type. And so I'm gonna go ahead and hit cancel. And then we're gonna go back over here with Matt, my wonderful volunteer, who actually didn't volunteer. I made him do it. So whatever. I played golf. Everybody else slept. So, okay. So I closed the asset. I want you to go ahead and click on the BOR right here, and then click on this little plus thing right here. So and on my computer over here, I'm logged in as Chloe. Don't go clicking buttons, man. Unclick that one. Okay, click the one next to Chloe, and click OK. So if you'll notice, I am not re-downloading the file. I'm not going back to my email. The file's still sitting there on my computer, and we're on whatever wonderful network there is here. And so now I'm gonna launch it again since he granted me permissions as Chloe. So while that loads, let's see what happened, the magic. So now we see a BOR. So what he's done effectively is given me rights to an asset that's on my own computer without any kind of I'm not on his network, I'm not in my enterprise. This is from the cloud, right? And so this is just one example of how you can control your data wherever it goes forever. So let's say you send out an email to 10,000 people with a bore on it, right? And then 2 weeks later, Colin's like, dude, bring the bore back. You're not supposed to have sent that out. It's intellectual property or something like that. You hit a switch, all those bores don't work anymore. On top of that, our software protects the asset by entropy, right? So we have a kernel level driver that lives in the OS at the lowest levels that essentially attaches to whatever process is going to launch the file. So I'm launching this file in Maya, right? And so this instance of Maya is controlled by my kernel driver. And so anything that goes in and out of this instance of Maya, I get to choose what happens to it. And so I can choose what I want to not protect, and I can choose what I want to encrypt on the fly. And so now I can have Matt work on an asset, and he can work on his own computer, if it's his 1987 MacBook, whatever he's good at using, he can use that and work for me, but he can't keep the data and then resell it to somebody else or distribute it on a torrent, that kind of thing. Right, so that being said, Matt, you've done a great job. Did I miss anything with Matt yet? Okay, cool. Matt, you can have a seat again and start drinking pretty soon. No, we're good, you can unplug that. And I'll take my thumb drive back. So let me show you some other things real quick. So what we like to tell people, our clients are really busy media people. So one of the guys at Warner Brothers, he has 10 movies coming out. He has to, and one movie will probably have 3,000 workers on it just to do VFX, right? And those 3,000 workers work for subcontractors anyway. It's a huge thing, and there's 10 of them at the same time. The last thing he wants to do is worry about a security software, right? So we like to say that you don't have to be a security expert to run our software. And I'll show you an example of why in a second. All right, so if you're a really busy guy, executive at Warner Brothers or whatever, you can just have our dashboard up on your phone or on a monitor in your office that just sits there, and the only thing you need to worry about is if this thing turns red, okay? If it's not red, everything's cool. All your 10,000 people and all the complicated things that are going on, everything's cool. But if there is an issue, we give you quick, actionable intelligence. And I'll show you an example of that right here. So here we have a dashboard, which is an expanded dashboard from the agent that I was showing you in the small form factor. And we have a couple of alerts here that say that this one asset has been auto-locked, and also there was an unauthorized access attempt. So all that stuff is programmable, configurable. You can either make it silent so your user doesn't even know something's happening. That helps you trace leaks, because you can let the leak go and proliferate, and then you can figure out where all the people are that are interacting with it. Or you can make the user aware of it and be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. But as the busy studio executive at Warner, you're like, oh, I have 2 red things. Let me see what's going on here, right? So you can click on these guys, and it looks like when I click on it that something's happening in New Zealand down here. So I'm gonna click on New Zealand, and I see that out of all my 4 huge sub-vendors that are working on my project, that Lightstorm is the one that is the culprit. And so I can quickly dive in and determine who is the problem and either shut off the asset or take some kind of remediation, like call the guy and see if they have malware or see if they have a rogue employee, et cetera, right? So that's one instance of how our technology is easy to use for people that they don't have to be security experts. It's not a big onboarding process. But the other thing is, like I mentioned, there's a Sentinel watcher that's a component of our software. So in tandem with the kernel driver, somebody's gonna try to defeat it, right? They wanna kill it, they wanna do something to it like they do to antivirus. But the thing is, we have a Sentinel watcher that watches the machine whenever a sensitive asset is launched. And this Sentinel watcher is initially programmed with 4 threat vectors that are very common. So there's debug mode, stack dump, Chloe, what's the other one?
Stack Overflow,
oh yeah,
Memory Dump, Debug Mode,
Ninja Ripper, and Ninja Ripper, right. So Ninja Ripper rips geometry from the GPU, which is the hardest place to protect. And I won't get into super nerd talk, but I'm glad to take it offline with you guys. I could talk all day about it. The GPU is really hard to protect data. So when you load an asset and you're looking at a 3D asset, it's in the GPU and people try to rip it. So our Sentinel watches for those activities. But it not only does that, it watches for the steps that lead up to an activity. So if I'm on Matt Geiger's computer and I check the threat scene, right? I'm like, what does he have installed on his computer? What's running right now? What's going on when my asset is active? And if I see things that match the pattern of activity that could be somebody trying to defeat my technology, then I'm gonna first list it so all the sentinels in the world get updated with that in the hive mind in the cloud. And I'm also gonna watch the patterns that lead up to it. So that way, eventually, as I get smarter as a sentinel, I'll be able to watch for threat vectors that maybe the guy is thinking about doing, right? Like Chloe's about to do something bad, she's clicking this thing, she's running this program, she has this X software on her computer, she's probably not a good place to launch that asset. And over time, it'll get smarter. Of course, it's machine learning. I hate using those words I don't use blockchain. So, but yeah.
But anyway, so that's just a quick representation of a couple of features of our software, and there's a lot of stuff that we could chat about, but I'd rather just open it up for questions.
Because, so that instance of Maya, everything that goes in and out of it's controlled by us, right? So when you hit save as, the file will save as, but we're encrypting it on the fly. So you could save as 10 different file names, derivative works, but that instance knows that it came from the asset that was protected, and so those protections then fall down on the children that come from there. No, that's the thing we don't do, okay? So our competitors try to work with Maya, right? And Maya updates 4 times a year, and every time they update, who knows what even changes, right? And they write plugins. Well, we don't do plugins, because what we want to do is be something that scales, right? So it doesn't matter what software you're running. Chloe can tell you a little bit more about this in a second, but it doesn't matter. We don't care what app is running. We let the app run as it does, but we control what comes out and into it.
That's because of the kernel driver that latches onto the process. So that's one of our secret sauce, is that because of the kernel driver, we don't care about what application is running, and it's controlling the inputs and outputs that come out of the software. And the reason that we're able to do that is one of our technical advisors has been in the kernel space for 30 years, developing these mini filter drivers for the CIA, NSA. And so he's built also profiler tools where he can throw an application into there and say how many reads and writes it's doing. So for example, this is another reason why other solutions haven't done this. When, let's say, Microsoft Word or Excel opens, they're maybe doing like 30 to 80 reads and writes. When you open Maya, it's doing 440,000 reads and writes. So we have to be able to...
With a blank asset.
Yeah, with a blank session. And so Anthony Kemka, our technical advisor, has written profiler tools of what to care about, what files are coming in and out of the application, and the ones that we need to protect.
What we do is dangerous, right? And that's why people don't play in this space, because you have to know exactly what you're doing, and you have to be very exacting on your testing, your deployment, everything. And then you have to send your code to Microsoft, and they have to sign it too. And then when you're done with that, if you change one line of code, you have to submit it again and do the whole process over again. But if you do it wrong, you're going to blue screen somebody's computer, you're going to brick it. And literally, your machine might not be usable again. And so that's why a lot of people don't play in this space. But we have guys that have played in this space for 30 years, and that's why we can pull it off.
And we're also part of the Microsoft Fast Track and Partner Program. So whenever we have to, let's say, do something new in the kernel, a new feature, and we have to push it up to Microsoft, it's like a 48-hour process to get it signed by them.
But Gregor, does that make sense, like how we do that? Or do you still have more questions about it? So Microsoft has a framework, right, in their kernel where you can interact with it. And the framework that we work with is called a mini filter. And that mini filter is designed to control traffic that goes down in the binary level. And so it's specifically designed for stuff like this, but not for our idea, right? But that's what we work with, the mini filter framework. And that's how we can do what we do. And it's not easy to write the code, I'm telling you. Like, I don't even understand it, I'm the CTO, but I know the people that work for me do, so it's cool. So Linux is coming down the road. And Linux is going to be an easier path because security is kind of built into Linux. So that's next. But we found that a lot of these people that are designing graphics, heavy 3D, they get more bang for their buck on a PC because you can build one with like 10 graphics cards and whatever, and it's like 1/10 the price of a Mac. But that's next on the roadmap is the Linux kernel and whatever else like.
Well, and then also in the meantime, if there's some project managers that, let's say they want to grant permissions or they want to review the asset, but they don't actually need a Maya installed in their computer, we have a web portal for that. So the web portal's first, and then Linux is going to come next.
So when you turn your network connection off, certain things will happen. Initially, we don't like that. So we're going to be like, save the file, cut it off. You need to be connected to the network to work on this asset. Down the line, we'll have an offline case where I might have a hardware dongle or something that supports like maybe a, whatever, 2 months offline, 1 month, 1 day. That will be handled locally. And the kernel driver is still running, right? And it's still protecting the data. So I can do what I want to even though I'm not connected to it. And I can let you still work on it. And I can let it save itself with, this is the part where you can get in a little security hole if you store keys in the memory for encryption. So that's something that's going to be a little bit down the line. But the offline use case, it's been requested here and there. But for right now, in the interim, first GA, we're not going to do offline use cases.
And the other reason for that too is just because we're not going after aerospace and defense first. We've already spoken with like technical fellows from Boeing, but they're the ones that not only do they need an offline case, but they're also, their compliance standards are much more rigorous. So we're building towards SOC 2 compliance and things, but that's why we're going media and entertainment and kind of the architecture, engineering, construction space first.
Okay, so here's the thing. We don't care what the data is, right? It's a blob of data, right? And it's encrypted, okay? So wherever it travels, it's encrypted, and when it's launched, if it's allowed to be launched, then it's attached to the kernel driver, right? When she's talking about recognition of the content, that's a little bit down the line. It's not that hard to do, it's just math though. It's a bunch of points, does this match, you know? It's a similarity score, right? And there's other ideas I could tell you about that we're gonna do later on, like people can copyright their designs and all that other stuff. But right now, we know what the data is because it has a GUID, and we know that data is Matt's data, it's his borer, right? And that's how we track it, and that's how we have the keys that are managed. The keys hop every time the asset gets encrypted, and so that's how we do it. But did I miss part of your question? So
Yeah,
there's a function called decimate in 3D, right? And it's specifically designed for that. So it takes your image, and it's like, it just shakes it around and the points are a little bit off, right? That's easy to detect, but that's down the line. So I can't really address your question on how we're gonna do that right now because that's like 2, 3, 4 sprints away from us. We can't, but it's something I could do easily.
Right, but you bring up an important point. So the other reason why we're going 3D first is because inherent in the nature of a 3D file, you have to have all the geometry inside of it for it to be useful.
No, another important thing to note is every security system will eventually, somebody's going to try to figure out a way to defeat it, right? So that's why we have multiple layers, and that's why, to us, knowledge is the most important thing. I want to know what happened. I don't know, like, I need to be able to trace it back so then I can prevent it in the future, right? Or take some action. And so we collect a lot of information that's happening the whole time. And then we have our different components check each other to make sure they're not being compromised. So that's my side note there. So certainly. So my guy, Anthony Kemka, is very, very astute at this patent stuff. We have one patent pending.
Yeah, with patent pending and it's open for ITC. We have another 8 months to figure out what other countries we want to file it in.
And so, I mean, this application of it, like, you know, patent world, there's always somebody that has written, I'm going to protect everything and do this, whatever, with some vagaries, right? So far we haven't received any pushback on what we've patented so far. And then we are definitely very wary about whatever we do, we check. And it's our kernel driver, it's whatever, and that's what Anthony's like, we got to watch out for this, we got to avoid this. So it's something that's always on our mind because that's one of the values of our company is our intellectual property. So. And
the other thing is also figuring out, are there certain things that we want to keep trade secret versus patenting it? Because if we open that up, then everyone knows what we're doing.
Here's how we do everything. Watch a graph of it. That's what a patent does, right? So.
Yeah, so if we take a bottoms-up approach, let's just say you're looking at the top 2 3D content creation industries, which I mentioned, media and entertainment, architecture, engineering, construction. There's about 250,000 of those companies in the US alone. And if we take a blended rate of our annual contract value, average annual contract value, which is around 88,000, that represents 22 billion plus in annual recurring revenue. I use that as an example because that's one geography, 2 verticals, and we're going to expand into other geographies, multiple other verticals. You're talking healthcare, aerospace, defense, et cetera. So that's the easiest way to kind of give you an idea of what that opportunity is.
And we'll do it in tandem.
Oh, so Matt was asking who are our biggest top 3 competitors? What are they doing differently? Are they working on a solution like this? And if they were to build it, how long would it take?
You do the lead-in.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a lot of indirect competitors. The closest ones are the document management solutions like Seclor, Ionic, and Vera. They're doing a combination of different things. They've started to protect 3D CAD just because they have to protect 2D CAD. And a couple of them are taking the plugin approach, which, as Partha mentioned earlier, when you have 60 plus software applications and Autodesk is pushing updates every quarter, it's a never-ending battle and a pain to maintain. And then you've got kind of the Azure Rights Management approach, which Vera is taking. Partha, do you want to?
Yeah, so I have a couple of anecdotes. So I did a competitive intelligence call with Vera, and they use a shim. If anybody's familiar with it, it's like it's a section of your OS that's subjugated to, this is where things are going to run on it. They use a shim and they use Azure Rights Management with plugins, right? And it doesn't work well at all. As a matter of fact, we were at Warner Brothers, and we were with these two guys. What was the one guy?
It is the VP of Production Systems and the Digital Asset Manager, and they were asking their colleagues about Vera because they did a pilot with them on one of their production shows.
Yeah.
And he had some words.
So he was asking his colleague real time while we were there on chat, like, what do you think of Vera? And like his facial expression was like, dude, you need to read what he's saying over here, because like it was just flame of how bad his experience was with it. But on my competitive intelligence call, I asked him an interesting question. I was like, okay, this is cool and all, but will you ever support Final Cut? And if you guys are familiar with Final Cut, it's a video editing software. And in reality, video editing software is not complicated. It's loading video clips, it's loading sound clips, and then it's doing math, right? Whereas a Maya, like Chloe mentioned, is doing 480,000, 500,000 writes just to open an empty file, right? And they were like, no, we're never going to touch Final Cut because it's too complicated. That was the answer, and I liked it. But it's because how they architect their tech. With a shim and their plugins, it doesn't work right because that architecture does not support complicated applications.
And one other thing to note, Autodesk, for example, because we've gotten this question, why doesn't Autodesk just do this themselves? They did include encryption in a couple of their applications, and after about a year or two, they decided to take it out of the application, and they said to customers, if you would like to protect your files, please find an industry standard AES 256 encryption to protect your files. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want the liability.
I have another quick funny story. So these big media entertainment studios that we talked to, like Fox and Disney, they have these tools they use. One of them is called Media Seal, okay? And let me just tell you about Media Seal. So Media Seal, it sends an encrypted file. It's called .enc or whatever. And you get it on your computer, and you like launch it in Adobe Creative Suite or whatever, like an audio editing software. And it's like, what's your password, right? You type in the password, and then what happens? It unencrypts all the files. It imports them, makes new unencrypted files. And the guy's like, it's important to note that it's making new unencrypted files, so you need to follow whatever your security procedure is to take care of this. So essentially all they are is a password-protected zip file. And this is what they're using as an industry standard in the media and entertainment industry. We don't use Python. Python is a very powerful language. I love it. You can do so much in one command. We're using C# and then C at the low level. And then our backbone is all Azure. But we could be on AWS, but I like Microsoft the way they treat me better, and their whole thing is cleaner. Security's more tight. So yeah. And for the stuff you saw today, there's a little React, whatever, Node.js. So.
Yeah. So our first customer is Trimble Navigation. If you guys haven't heard of them, most people know them because they bought SketchUp from Google in 2012. Their initial use case, they're actually paying us $150,000, but the $50,000 was for support and configuration, and then it triggers their annual license upon the last delivery. Partha can go quickly into their use case because he's really good at telling it.
Sure, so I'll do it quickly. So Trimble bought Building Data. Building Data spent the last 10 years creating 8 million components in a library. These components are everything you see in this building, from the ductwork to the lighting to the wiring, everything, right? And not only that, but these components know what they're next to because they have metadata, 300 pieces of metadata each. So if I run a pipe with hot water next to a gypsum board that can't take that heat, and I do that in a big CAD design, it's going to be like, dude, you need to look at this. There's an alert. Some kind of issue is going to be here, right? And it could be the most complex building design. And so architects, they use these libraries. They lease them. They go online. They pay like $1,200, $1,500 for access to it. Every manufacturer of every single part that they have has collaborated with them to make these parts. So that's exactly what the manufacturer says it is, right? So the problem is, though, Autodesk bought the consuming software from Building Data. not the libraries. So Autodesk called it Fabricate, and now Fabricate consumes the building data libraries. But Autodesk does not play well with anybody else. They don't tell you what's going on. They won't let you know what's going on with the licensing or what kind of assets are being used. And so people are just putting them on torrents, and then everybody has all the assets, and Trimble's subscriptions have gone down 66% because of that. And
And so to answer your question about the entry point there, so it took about 4 months from start to signing the contract, and that was because of the fact that, one, I think because we're so early on and they've been burned quite a few times on trying to get a solution like this for the past 2.5 years. They've spent money before and nothing got delivered. And so we ended up extending the delivery window with them from 3 to 6 months because we had this 2-month window of opportunity, because there's about 2 to 3 weeks of cross development to get the stuff into their application that then pushes the assets. And so it took about 4 months, but the cool thing about Trimble is that all of the other divisions want to apply this technology, and when you're talking about, let's say, the SketchUp division, the annual license there could easily be in the millions. And they also just came out with a helmet where they partnered with Microsoft and the HoloLens, where let's say you're 1,000 miles away, you can collaborate on the same design together, and they want to be able to apply our technology across all the other divisions. The sales cycle, though, for let's say a Caterpillar, we're in contract discussions with them, it's been a little bit less than a month. And we're looking to close them in the next 2 weeks. So we seem to be moving more quickly in the enterprise sales cycle than other people at our stage.
It's kind of strange, because we skip those initial conversations of why, and we jump right into the tech. And that's partially because of our connections with our advisors that know a lot of the people that get us into these meetings, but people that, they get the tech, and so they're just like, how do I implement it? How's this going to work? And so we skip a couple of those stages there. And by the way, Trimble, so I like to take a little bit of risk because I believe in my product. And so last week we did our first delivery for them with the kernel driver and everything. And I was like, okay, let's get on the phone, spin up a VM, and install my stuff. The build, right? Went flawlessly, man. It installed on their machine. They tried to break it in 10 different ways, and it all worked the way it was supposed to. That's a merit to our QA team, who has 85 different machines spun up, and the minute my dev team is done deving a certain build, everything gets run through every single version of Windows 10, Windows 8.1, and in 20 minutes we know whether that build is going to work or not. And so it's very important that we have that, otherwise we won't be able to do what we do. And my QA engineer's really OCD, so I like that.
Everything is different, so. Cool. Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Think you understand the junior mining sector, and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
How violent that term could be, it actually could be quite violent. It could be a rip-your-face-off uranium rally.
And the world is always going to need raw materials. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, Troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen?